Rob, great to have you here tonight. Thank you for being here. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm good, man. Nice to seeing everybody signing in from all over the country. He's brought it all back.
When you're not on runs around the world and being superhuman, what does a normal day look like for you, Rob?
Oh well, I work as a vet in Birkenhead, so it's just over the water from Liverpool. I'm currently sort of trying to move house, so it's mostly been taken up with that rather than anything sort of adventurous, so to speak. But I'm still trying to get out.
I guess really just, for everybody here tonight to go back to where did it all start for you? What got you into running such a long way?
I guess I just sort of fell into it really. I did cross country at school, and then when I went to uni, I just played footy because it was more fun than anything else. And it's only when I went to Australia to live for 3 years, I'd like to just thought I probably wouldn't be very good at Aussie rules given my build, and I joined a local athletics club. I just got really into it, and somehow I got quite good at it because I think it was 2015 managed to be Aussie national marathon champion. And so I got a phone call from Athletics Australia on the day asking me if I would consider switching nationality if their guys didn't qualify for the Olympics. And I was learning the words to Waltz and Matilda very quickly, but unfortunately, they did qualify. But I'm still proud to be a Brit. It was just quite funny that when I was doing the Marathon Des Sables, I was listed in a lot of places as being Australian. So, semi-dual nationality.
Blimey. So it sounds like you've obviously ran in lots of different fields and times. Did I read your best marathon time is sub 2:30 as well?
Yes, 2:27. So it's not quite sort of threatening the Olympics, but how it happened was because I came 10th in the Sydney Marathon. And because it's an IAAF gold race, a top 10 finish there carries, an automatic Olympic qualifier. So I'll always be able to say I qualified for the Olympics, even though I didn't quite get there. I might get the Olympic ring tattoo, but only do like 3.5 circles or something like that.
So nowadays, we hear, about the outdoors and adventure, and it's probably on the verge of being overused. But what does adventure mean to you personally?
I recently learned of a French adventurer, the late great Stéphane Brosse, who summed it up a lot more eloquently than I ever could. But when he said it, I was just like, yes, that's it. And his quote was, to be truly free, therefore to be an adventurer, is to choose your own path. And so you're saying that, adventure is being overused, but maybe we could find adventure wherever we go. It doesn't have to be, sort of an expedition up Mont Blanc or, sort of crossing a vast desert. I think sort of adventure should be and is accessible to everyone. Just a lot of people don't realize that it is, and we've got some incredible places in this country. They might not be quite as grand as the mountains behind you, but they're no less beautiful. And if you test yourself in the Lake District, for example, you'll find they're no less tough, just different.
Definitely. I think that's a good point, especially this kind of, the last 2 months and lockdown 3. I know a lot of people have found it really hard because of the dark nights and cold, and people maybe aren't being as active as normal. And what advice would you give to them maybe to help them stay active and find adventure, even, if it's close to home?
It's actually quite relevant, really, because having a lot on my plate at the moment, I've really, really struggled to manage to find that time, and I'm still sort of struggling now. So it's testing things out myself. And I genuinely think what I'm going to be trying to be doing is just to get out early, because it's so tough. It's lovely finishing work in July, and you get home at sort of 5 and you think, oh, I'm a bit hungry, I'll have my dinner. But then it's like, it gets to 7:30, you think, oh, great, I'll get out for a run. But, that happens now at 7:30, you just like, sod that, just not going out. I'm a fairly fair weather runner. I was very grateful of the lakes treating me nicely when I visited in September. But I think you've just got to get up early, really, and sort of before you've got the opportunity to persuade yourself otherwise, because, sofas are really comfy this time of year.
Great advice. I think you just say, just trying to make it a habit, get it in there.
Yeah, exactly.
From all your trips and all your times around the world, I know there must have been some really hard moments and some really, really tough bits of uncertainty and setbacks, and all sorts of strange things must have happened. Is there anything from that journey, and any journey really, that that is helping you now? Any kind of mindset or any kind of tips that you've picked up from that I think are all helpful for us in our everyday lives?
Well, one thing I found sort of because my days on the road, even though I was seeing different things every day, there was a lot of monotony, which is quite good in a way because it meant you got good at doing what you were doing. But because the only real variables were maybe chatting to a different person or a different view, you got very in tune with the way your body works and your psychology. And I found I'd go through a 3 or 4 day cycle of let's just go to I was average on day one, and day two I might be amazing, day three I'd be average, but day four there would almost always be a day where I felt completely rubbish, and it didn't matter whether I was well fed and warm and in a beautiful place, or whether it was sort of chucking down. It was just like, nope, this seemed to be like my little dip. And, so whether my timings are the same as anyone else's, but I've got a feeling that a lot of people have that and don't recognize it. And of course, if you don't have the time to like massively self-analyze, you just go, God, why am I all sad all the time? And you're not sad all the time. You're sad every 4 days. But because, if you have a lovely day, all it takes is one idiot to really upset you and ruins your day and stuff like that. It doesn't matter that 23 hours preceding it were fantastic. And so when stuff negative that happens, it can really knock us back and affect us. And we aren't necessarily appreciative of the good or even just the average moments. Average moments for us, given like the fact that we're in the UK, things are generally pretty sweet. Average moments for us are pretty special for a lot of other people. But I always found that if I had a rubbish day, I would be feeling a bit better the next day. And then the fact that I knew I was going to feel better eventually would make that rubbish day better as well, because I'm just like, oh, it'll be better tomorrow. And even if it did carry on a little bit into the next day, I knew that there would be an improvement just because of my physiology. My sort of whatever hormones, my dopamine or whatever like that would suddenly recover and peak, and then you were there. And so I just found that sort of I began to just ignore the rubbish times, and I set myself a little rule that if I had 7 rubbish days in a row, I would go home, because, obviously these days of social media, nobody wants to see me running through a beautiful desert and going, oh, my life's rubbish. This is really hard. I miss everyone, stuff like that. Because they just go, I'd give my, sort of left arm to be there. But it never happened. It was like, 2 or maybe even 3 days, 3 when I was injured all the time. Things will get better, and things do get better.
Oh, fantastic. I love that. I think, as you say, just being able to know that there's going to be that next peak,
Yeah.
and not kind of having that kind of permanent mindset is what I picked up from that.
Yeah, it's so hard to do that in your day-to-day life, though. You're busy at home, your kid's sick, and you're worried about money and you're worried about work. You just can't see that. But your physiology is just going, I bet you're going to feel better in 2 days. And so maybe just knowing that your body wants to make you better. Remember, doctors don't cure you. Doctors just stop you getting worse while your body sorts it out, because your body's the best thing going. And yeah, things will get better.
That's amazing. And I think as well, it is true that day 2 of the ultra is always the worst, isn't it? That kind of second day is when everything starts to break, and you think, how on earth am I going to run another day, or in your case, another few hundred days?
Yeah.
And on the journey, especially across America, however many times, there must have been a lot of kindness and support along the way, and lots of things that probably surprised you. Were there any kind of like standout moments from that journey for you?
Yeah, it was off the chain really, and I started to really notice it when like Nadine, my girlfriend, had to go home because we got a camper van and we had a lovely time and we thought we were engaging with people, but we closed the door of the RV at the end of the day, and then that was it. But it was only when I was out on my own and I was forced to engage with people. And I did a lot of couch surfing, and some days, if I was on one of my lower ebbs, I'd just be like, oh God, I'm staying somewhere tonight, which should have been a cause for, sort of cheer and everything like that. But I just can't be bothered talking to anyone. Just can't be bothered with it. I'll just go in, be polite and go to bed. And then you turn up at the house and they'd be like, hey, how's it going? Well, how's your day been? And within 2 minutes, I would forget about all my griping just because I'm actually engaging with people, and everything would be great. And I'd end up staying up far too late, but I'd be energized the next day. One particular one it was very near the end, and I was in a place called Grants in New Mexico. It's like sort of just off Route 66, and it's sort of a pretty poor place, and it was raining in the desert. And this lady pulls up alongside me in a fairly beat up old car. And then she was just like, "Do you need a ride?" And I'm just like, "Oh, I can't, I'm doing this run across America. I can't accept any lifts." And she was just like, "Do you need an umbrella?" And I was like, "No, no, no, I'm fine. I literally, I couldn't run with it. It'd just be too awkward. Thanks so much though." So she drives off, and about 10 minutes later, she comes back with the umbrella, which I had to just go, "Oh no, honestly, I can't take it." But also her penny jar. And then she just said, "Can I just give you this?" And I was just like, I saw what a car was like, and I saw where she'd pulled out of, which was a fairly rundown trailer park. And fortunately, because I was carrying my stuff and pushing it, I had the excuse of going, "I can't take your money because I know that you can't spare it," because she definitely couldn't. I just said, "Oh, listen, I've not got any room on my stroller. Thank you so much." And then she just went, "Are you sure?" And I went, "Yeah, if you decide you can spare it on me, that means you can spare it on yourself. Go and treat yourself. Sort of don't take that back to your house. Go and buy something nice for you." And that was what it was like the whole way through, just
Wow.
very, like, every time I get asked this, I tell a different story. I think that's the first time I've told that one.
Amazing, amazing. And I remember you saying in the lakes about one guy that turned up, and he did he bring you like 3 burgers, 2 packs of something else, and they think that you can somehow eat all that on the go.
Yeah, well, it was a bit more than that. Like, he came with about 9 liters of water, and like I had enough water, and so I was just like, "Oh, thank you very much, mate, but I'm all right." He said some Gatorades, and I thought, "Well, I will take some of them." And then he had 10 Burger King cheeseburgers, and so I'm allergic to cheese. So I said to him, "Oh man, I'm just allergic to cheese, but thanks so much." He went, "That's okay. I'll just give them to my kids when I get home." And I was like, "How many kids have you got?" And he's like, "2." It's like, fair play. Super size, man. Super size.
Fantastic. God, I bet you've got so many stories to share. That human kindness and perspective is, it's quite amazing. And I guess when you've been on a journey like that, how do you cope when you come back? Because we often talk about this in the outdoor world about, the kind of post-expedition blues, and you've been in the hills all weekend and come back to the office, and that, that kind of down feeling. Did you feel that? And if so, how did you deal with that?
Well, it's a funny one, really, like, sort of, because in veterinary, it's like a super, super intense, mental thing. And there's a lot, sort of people who struggle in the profession. In fact, I think sort of we've got like the second highest suicide rate of any profession going. And so mental health's been a biggie for ages. And I've generally been fairly comfortable in my own skin. And I didn't even think about sort of post-run blues, to be honest, but there's a group called USA Crosses on Facebook. And I joined that. And then there were people talking about this thing. And I was just like, "Oh, well, I'm not going to get that." But when I got back, I struggled for ages. And because I was so, "Well, I'll be fine," I didn't realize it happened. And like, sort of, maybe I was a bit snappier. Certainly didn't do anywhere near as much outdoors stuff. And I was just a bit like, "No," like, everything was rubbish. I forgot all my good advice about that 4-day cycle. And yeah, eventually sort of I realized what was going on, and then just tried to get out more, and then remembering that things get better, and just even be aware of how you're sort of treating people, and just thinking, was I cool then, or was I not? And yeah, it was a long sort of crawl out. It wasn't a sharp slope or anything like that, but I think maybe just as a consequence of the long drag of the run, it was a long drag out of it as well. So it's all good.
I guess I have to ask, in terms of next projects, how could you ever go bigger than that? I mean, have you got anything in the pipeline at the moment?
I'm an ideas man. I've always got sort of some things going on. I think sort of like closer to home. I think at one point I've at least got to go from the Bend to Scarfell, because, to be honest, any opportunity to finish a thing in the Lake District will always be appreciated. I'd like to do some running in Ireland. My original plan, when I bought the stroller that went to the States and became Pram Solo to my Chewbacca, was to run across Australia. And I think that's got to be the one. that I would love to do. But because I'm slightly OCD as well, I don't want to be saying in 20 years' time, sort of in the new union in Kendal, why I only ran across America 4.7 times. Now, of course, Forrest never got to his fifth ocean, but I want to go back to that place where I finished, and also obviously propose to my now wife, Nadine, and then run from Monument Valley to the ocean. And just so I can say I ran across 5 times.
It's close enough, and it's still a long way, but I'm sure you'll get back and smash it out for sure. So,
maybe more leisurely.
have you got one particular favorite outdoor experience from all of it so far?
This one's just come to mind as you asked that. When I was lip syncing a video to U2's Where the Streets Have No Name, I was just running along this desert highway. And then as the whole music just sort of kicked in, I just veered off into the desert because I knew that up ahead was the actual Joshua Tree from the Joshua Tree album. And that was feeling free, just literally cutting across and finding my goal. I found what I was looking for, as Bono, I think, wrote once.
Oh, wow. I bet that song now must bring back a lot of memories for you. In the last 9 months, obviously, we've all had to stay a bit more local. Have you got a favourite go-to activity or place to run?
Yeah, quite lucky having like a good park near me, and I'm just hankering for the return of the mighty park run.
Oh.
Yeah, no, those old days. I found a new one the other day though. I found I can get pretty close to the banks of the Mersey from my work and run along to the end of the peninsula at New Brighton. So that's going to be my new go-to. Yeah, here's to April or May when we're finally in a better place.
Oh, God, I hope so. And I guess, is there then, one place that you're most looking forward to as soon as we're able to travel?
I was talking about doing a Bob Graham at some point, maybe sometime this summer. But one of the other answers is just the pub.
Both worthy options. So now I've had shouts of Run Forest Run. So I've got to ask, how many times a day were you getting people shout that at you during your run?
It did get more frequently at the end, but when I was going through LA on the first one, I was actually running with the Bubba Gump cap on that day. I just had a bit of stubble, much less than I've got now. And I was running past this school in a fairly sort of, rough and ready area. And this lad must have been about 12, shouted, "Run, Forrest, run." So I just sort of stopped and turned around, and he was just like, "Oh no, I shouldn't have said that." So I just start walking over towards him, and he's petrified. So I get there, just point at the cap, and he goes, "Oh my God, I knew it was you." And so I was so like the movie. And I would say to anyone, if anyone's doing a marathon, if you don't dress up like Forrest Gump in a marathon, you are missing a trick. Like when I did London dressed up as Forrest, I'm pretty certain that I got more shouts than anyone apart from Samo. So that's the way forward. Everybody loves the running Forrest.
Don't you have the Guinness World Record for the fastest marathon in a film costume?
Yeah, I took it off some guy dressed as Elsa as Frozen, and so I don't feel too guilty with my fairly minimalist running costume because he was in Lycra as well. If he'd gone as Optimus Prime and I'd stolen his record, I'd feel a bit of a fraud. But yeah,
nicely done then. Nicely done.
Exactly. I wait for somebody to dress up as Chariots of Fire and just take it.
How many miles did you do in 2020?
In 2020, I think it was about 2,500. Yeah. So reasonable amount. So slightly less than I did in 2017, where I run more miles than anybody on the planet. I need to actually do the maths on it, but it was about 12,500.
Praise and kudos there. Wow, some mileage. So a question there from Lawrence.
Yeah, so I was just wondering, what inspired you to jump from being a marathon runner to doing this adventure? Because I was most marathon runners, they wouldn't go near something like this. They wouldn't even go near an ultra. So what was it that sort of created that spark?
To be honest, I did harbour ambitions, not necessarily of going to the Olympics, because the back door that I found in Australia was probably the only chance I would ever get near that again. But I did think about when I was moving home that following winter, I would try and see, what I could do if I could really train. Now, I came back for what I thought was my dream job and turned out to be nothing of the sort. And I just couldn't train at all. So I ended up sort of saying to my missus, I'm going to quit this job. And I'd thought for years about, I'd love to have run across America, because I'd read a book by a chap called Nick Baldock, and it just seems so great. And of course, sometimes you have little peaks and troughs in your idea formative, processes. And I'd thought about running across Australia before Sydney happened, and I had the stroller, but I didn't do it. It was just opportunity. And I thought, this is it. It's now or never. I was 38 at the time. So, I may have already run my fastest marathon. Yeah, don't always stick to the plan. Sometimes follow a plan, but if a plan comes and finds you, don't be afraid of taking that one as well.
How hard is running through the desert valleys like Monument? Looks very hot.
Yeah, like sort of, I tried to avoid the worst of the weather that a place would have. It was still pretty hot when I got to Monument. It was like the end of April, but you got to about sort of 28 degrees. And I ran with a local Navajo farmer called Jonah, and he'd been actually running up and down the road all day trying to find me. And I was just like, how many miles have you done, dude? And he's like, 40. And I was just like, wow, he's still come with me for another 10. So he, just acclimatizes to it. And you found that you did acclimatize. I acclimatized a lot better to the heat than I did the cold. My highest temperatures were up in Wisconsin and Montana around like sort of 43. And the coldest I ever got was in Alabama, -18. So like a 60-degree swing in temperature. But as you outdoorsmen know, there's no such thing as bad weather, just bad equipment.
Wow, that's quite a contrast though. Question from Fred, if you want to come off mute.
I was just going to ask you, I'm reading a great book at the moment, Running with the Kenyans, which is basically about secrets of why the Kenyans are so fast. And the book says that it's because they grow up basically running everywhere. Are there any kind of secrets, like personal secrets, that you could share for aspiring long distance runners? And
I am very much a lone warrior. Quite often when I run, most of my training is on my own. But if you want to get quick, I would get in a club that you enjoy going to and running with people who are faster than you. And then, funnily enough, it does make you faster as well. And just find what works for you. Like I was out today, I was just driving around, and I saw some people running in shorts and t-shirt. It's like sort of a balmy 1 degrees in Liverpool. And I just thought, I don't enjoy that. Don't like that at all. And so if you're like sort of thinking, oh, I'm not going to go out running, why? Because it's raining and because it's cold. Like sort of, well, find a solution. Some gyms are so cheap now. You might have the space to get like a cheap treadmill. Because remember, with the treadmills, they don't have to be as fast as you can go. You can just use those things to keep your legs ticking over. So just find what works for you. But to get quick, I would say run with people who are quicker.
So, Kieran, if you want to come on the camera.
Any advice on kind of when you were running every day, of like running through aches and pains and injuries, how to overcome that when stopping running is just not an option?
So it's the 3 out of 10 rule. I ran every day when I was on the run. So the only time I ever had a break was, I think I missed 2 days with a torn quad, and I was walking on day 3, 2 days with a gluteal issue that was absolutely awful. And again, walking, and eventually built up a running, and 5 days with food poisoning. So yeah, it was every day. Now eventually the body does adapt, and at the end of it, I was no more tired than I was after a normal day at work, whether I'd done 50 or 60 miles. So you're bound to pick up these little niggles. If I'd have had my time again, I didn't train for it beforehand. I just realized, I may as well train on the run. I'd have had a much stronger core, and gradually becoming a lot more aware of the fact that the core strength and core flexibility is really, really key. You'll have a pain, or you might be coming back from an injury. I've got a mate who's had patellar tendonitis, and he's struggling to run at the moment. And I'm sort of saying to him, go to a physio, because I think your pain's not really real. It's just your tendon now saying, I don't want to do this anymore. So a good physio told me once that if you go to a pain that's 3 out of 10, and it's not getting worse, that is fine to keep going on with. Now, the tricky thing is where your 3 out of 10 is. And I found that I've got a high tolerance to pain, and that's how I tore my quad. I gave myself a grade 1 tear in Arkansas, carried on running through it, and then I found that it was less painful if I ran quicker than slower, and we all know where this story ends. So it didn't go 3, it only went to grade 2. But yeah, find out where your limits are. Once you know, now this is definitely getting worse, you just have to find something that can take the load off. Maybe you try a slightly different activity like your cycling sort of, or you know, even just sort of like walking. But yeah, core flexibility and core strength will hopefully make sure that day's a long way away for you.
The one from Jane was quite similar, really, just in terms of how to keep your feet in tip-top shape.
Just make sure you've got good socks. I treated myself to a clean pair of socks at the start of the long stage in the Marathon des Sables, and I'll tell you another funny story. The long stage, I should have put my buff on during a sandstorm. It would have took me 30 seconds to get it from the bottom of my bag where I put it like an absolute idiot. But instead, I decided to push on through the sandstorm, and it probably ended up costing me 2 hours or something in the race as a whole. So I was struggling at the end of that long stage. It was dark. I was like kicking rocks, and I go to the Doc Trotter's tent, and they take my shoes off and look at it and go, Robert, your feet, they are so beautiful, not a single blister. So why do you have to kick so many rocks, you silly, silly man? So the moral of the story is get shoes with a good toe box and wear good socks.
Blimey. Well, that sense of humour, but also kind of thoughts of horror, and just the thought of having feet in that state for that length of time is just unbearable for some. Amazing. Well, Rob, I'm sure we could chat all night, and there's so many more stories. Thank you so much for, you know, just sharing part of that tonight. What's the best way for people to obviously, you know, find you and connect with you and find out more about your work?
I always do sort of my own social and stuff, and I made a point on the America run to reply to every single thing, even if I didn't really have the time, because I figure if someone's interested enough to reply to me, if I see it, I'll always get back to you sometimes. So yeah, they're the things, sort of, you know, Twitter, the Facebook, the Instagram, and you know, it's the same thing for the YouTube channel. If you fancy some fun videos and you're a fan of like sort of middle of the road dad rock as well, I'd love to hear from you guys. Any questions, sort of, yeah, I'll always be there for you.
Cheers, Rob. Thank you again.